I invite the member for Nanaimo-Lansville to lead the House in prayer or reflection.
Mr. Speaker, I read this prayer on behalf of Reverend Chambers of St. Andrew's Wesley United Church, Galatians chapter 5, 13 to 15. Brothers and sisters, you were called to freedom. Only do not let your freedoms become an opportunity for the flesh or for self-indulgence, but through love, serve one another. For the whole Torah can be summed up in a single saying, love your neighbor as yourself, but if you bite and devour one another, watch out that you are not destroyed by one another. Let us pray. Holy One, gather us all in the embrace of your love. In each one of us, your light shines, and we pray that in our work today, you call out our better angels. Do we disagree on some important things? Yes. Do we have different ideas of what's wrong and how to fix it? Thank goodness, yes. We pray our different backgrounds and experiences and perspectives don't tear us apart, but bring us together in a greater appreciation of the complex whole of us. We pray our differences don't make us small and petty in our service, but enlarge us towards something collectively greater, something truly good. Here we are, called to serve. What a privilege. May we wrestle and work together for the common good. Here we are, but not for long, on this good earth. Mindful of the short time we have, may we live for the good of all. We offer this prayer. Amen.
Introductions by members. Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. You know what I say, it's always a good day in the House when we have constituents from New Westminster. And in New West, what we say is New Westies are the besties. Would folks please join me in welcoming Patrick Mayor Johnstone and Denise Tambellini, who are here. They've been here for a couple of days taking some meetings and working on issues of real critical importance to folks in our communities, housing, healthcare and such. Would the House please join me in making them feel very welcome.
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. I also am delighted to have two visitors from my riding, Mid-Island Pacific Rim, here in the gallery today. Sherilyn Bray and Chris Washington are two incredible women leaders. They were both born and raised in Port Alberni, which is the heart of Vancouver Island, and they serve as trustees on the Board of Education for Pacific Rim Schools, also known as School District 70, and they're both deeply committed to ensuring that our schools are places where children feel safe and honoured. It's absolutely incredible that you're here today. I'm so glad that they are, and would the House please join me in helping them feel very welcome.
Langley Willowbrook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm honoured to rise today to extend a warm welcome to Brent Barden, who joins us in the gallery as a proud member of the United Steelworkers Union. Brent is an amazing individual whose dedication to politics spans over 2 decades. His commitment to advocating for workers' rights and strengthening his community is truly amazing. I had the privilege of working alongside Brent during my first run for office and witnessed firsthand his deep passion, dedication, and his drive to create meaningful change. Please join me in giving Brent a well-deserved welcome.
Member for Surrey Newton.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I am so pleased and honoured to rise today to welcome someone who I know our entire caucus wanted to welcome, but I said dibs. I'd like to welcome a trailblazer, a champion for human rights, someone that has dedicated his life to public service for over 30 years, the Honourable Senator Voltage Dillon. We were so fortunate that he was one of our candidates in this previous election, and the work that he's done to advocate for human rights, champion justice and equality is bar none. He was the first turbaned Sikh officer in the RCMP, and I know personally he's a role model for me. But I would also like to welcome Mrs. Suraj Dillon, who is the lifeline, the blood in all of the work that I know Voltage does, and also is an extraordinary door knocker and campaign organizer, and I saw it firsthand. So please, if the House would join me in making them both feel very welcome.
Member for Richmond Queensborough.
Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to welcome Mayor Patrick Johnstone from the City of New Westminster. Mayor Johnstone was first elected as the new Westminster City Councillor in 2014. He served 2 terms. He went on to become the mayor of the city of New Westminster in 2022. And before entering politics, he was a professional geoscientist. And Mayor Johnstone is here today with his intergovernmental affairs manager, Denise Tambellini. May the House please make them feel welcome again. Thank you.
Minister of Emergency Management.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd like to welcome today the MP Wilson Miao from Richmond Centre. He serves many members of my community with all matters federal, and he's joined with MP Ron McKinnon from Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam. They're here today for an amazing announcement for pharmacare. The provincial government is so proud to be able to help countless British Columbians with our pharmacare partners in the federal government, and can the folks please make them welcome. And for my second introduction, I would also like to welcome Scott Lunny to the Chambers today. He's the Director of United Steelworkers District 3. I am so privileged to know such a strong champion of workers' rights who is tireless in the pursuit of helping workers in BC. Thank you.
Member for Seminar, Shuswap.
Our legislative assistants provide an invaluable service, as we are all well aware. At this time, I am pleased to welcome David and Shannon Gorski to the Chamber, who traveled all the way from Richmond to visit their son, my legislative assistant, Devin Gorski. Please welcome them.
Minister of Transportation.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I'd also like to join in a welcome to the MP for my community, MP Ron McKinnon. He has been serving our community. We've got a very good collaborative relationship, and I wish the House would make him most welcome.
Member for Bulkley Valley Keene.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce the Penner family today, visiting all the way from Smithers. It's approximately 14 hours here into Victoria, and it's their first time in the precinct. They own a business called New Creations. It seemed kind of prophetic that this company's new name, New Creations, were part of building a new Conservative Party. And what a fantastic team we had, or have. Nathan is our riding association president and was also my campaign manager. To put things into perspective, Bulkley Valley to Keene riding is 196,484 square kilometers. This was a bit of a challenge, so he had his job cut out for him. Joining him today is his lovely wife, Michelle, who spent many hours at home with the children while Nathan was traveling across the vast riding and all the way up the Stewart-Cassiar Highway, which is Highway 37, and meeting every person we met. If we stopped for fuel or a snack, Nathan was right there to engage them in conversation if they were there for more than 5 minutes. Nathan was ensuring that they were going to vote in preparation for the election. No was not an option. Also here with us today are his children, Ashley, Josiah, and Aaron. All helped with the campaign, but it was Aaron, little Aaron up there with his suit on, the youngest campaigner at the age of 8, who was always there to help. It did not matter what the weather was like, Aaron was there with his dad. Their oldest son, Matthew, remained home because he had to work. Will the House please make the Penner family very welcome?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It is my honour to introduce 2 special guests in the gallery with us today. I'd like to welcome Conservation Officer Dan Bartol and his canine partner, Kilo. Kilo recently retired from his search and detection duties, which included detecting invasive mussels. Dan is being recognized as the 2024 Conservation Officer of the Year and is in Victoria today to receive his well-deserved award. This award is presented to a conservation officer for going above and beyond the call of duty and exemplifying the values of the Conservation Office service: integrity, public service, and protection of the environment. Colleagues admire Dan for his selfless dedication to always going the extra mile. He's willing to assist other officers or zones as needed or lend an ear to an inspiring conservation officer. Dan exemplifies everything a conservation officer aspires to be and is deeply deserving of this recognition. It is my honor to recognize Dan with this award, and I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank all the conservation officers across the province for their hard work and dedication to ensure our environment, fish, and wildlife are protected for future generations. Would the House please welcome?
Member for Kelowna Mission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is an unofficial tradition that we often compete with one another across the aisle to pick up on others' introductions, but I will do a variation on that and pick up on the introduction made by the member for Salmon Arm Shuswap, because his legislative assistant is also my legislative assistant, and I want the best service. So I would like to welcome Shannon Gorski and her travel agent David Gorski to the House and ask for your indulgence of making a second planned introduction. Tariffs are forcing Canada to diversify, and we must be finding new buyers for Canadian-made products and commodities. Mike Butler at Optimus Group, Robert Bone at Deepwater Recovery, and Ravi Sangera at ST Wood Products are working to build out capacity in a transshipment hub strategy across British Columbia, and I look forward to meeting with them later today to discuss that further. Please make them welcome in the House.
Member for Kootenay-Monashee.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce today three union leaders from United Steelworkers from my riding. I consider them friends. Chris Walker, Dean Mott, and Ron McKenzie. They're great workers' rights leaders. They're okay curlers. Please join me in welcoming them.
Member for Burnaby East.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to recognize some amazing individuals that I've had the opportunity to work with as a member of United Steelworkers Local 2009. I'd like to introduce Al Bieksa, who's the president. And there's some other folks here that I don't have eyesight on, but I would like to recognize Tamara Marshall, who's the financial secretary at my home local, as well as Amin Jumber, who is the VP. And Brett Barden, I think, was mentioned, but he's the homie, so I want to say hi to him. And Mike Dura, who is my union pops and assistant to Scott Lunny, who is the director of District 3. These are amazing individuals. I cannot stress enough the opportunities that I was given. I got to serve on the National Anti-Racism Committee because a lot of the work that District 3 and my president did at Local 2009. So I just want to thank you all, and solidarity forever.
Member for Chilliwack, Cultus Lake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to give a very special shout out to my youngest daughter, Starling Estrella Borbis. This Saturday is International Women's Day, and I know to all the women in the House that one of the things we sacrifice to come here is our time with our kids. And I get to be with her on her birthday this weekend and spend that quality time. She's going to be 5 years old. She was born just before COVID hit all of us. Very, very difficult time. And I want to be able to show her this clip and let her know that even though I'm here apart from her and the family, that I'm thinking of her every single step of the way. Thank you.
Member for Surrey City Centre.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Mike Dura, someone who has seen me grow in my journeys as a staffer and now as an elected member. I also want to welcome Brett Barden, who I have known for almost a decade, and Brett Barden is a friend. He is a champion of progressive values. He is a brilliant mind. He has a dedicated heart. And I'm so pleased to actually be sitting here to get to be able to introduce someone who I look up to. Thank you very much.
Member for Surrey Serpentine River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see in the gallery today one of my riding's constituents and one of the strongest community supporters in Surrey Serpentine, and one of Canada's newest senator, Mr. Baltej Dillon. I'd like to welcome him to the House, and I hope that everyone will hello, Baltej.
Member for Burnaby Metro Town.
Thank you, Your Honor, Speaker. I just want to say my friend and good mentor, MP Peter Julian, was here today to join us making the announcement for the pharmacare. He's been an amazing mentor and supporter when I was running, and he's always been a leader in all of our progressive movements as currently federal NDP House leader. So I just want to have everyone on behalf of myself, and I'm sure all the caucus, but especially our Burnaby, New West and Coquitlam team, if you can please welcome him to this House. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Just a minor reminder to all of you, when we are making introductions, keep them short. We can make 2-minute statements later on. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Introduction of bills. Statements by members.
Member for Langley Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a man whose impact will be felt for generations, Peter Wall. Vancouver and beyond will forever be shaped by Peter's vision, generosity, and belief in people. Born in Ukraine, Peter immigrated to Canada in 1948 with his family, starting with little but building an incredible legacy. As co-founder of Wall and Redicop Corporation and later Wall Financial, he transformed Vancouver's skyline with projects like the Wall Centre, the city's tallest building when it was built, but his influence stretched beyond real estate. Peter studied chemistry at UBC but never graduated, instead pursuing home building. Decades later, UBC awarded him with an honorary doctorate, recognizing his immense contributions. His $15 million donation to UBC in 1991 was the university's largest at the time. One of many acts of generosity sporting causes like the Canadian National Institute for the Blind and the Vancouver Police Foundation, also mental health and addiction. Peter believed in lifting people up, those with drive and ambition, no matter their background. I was one of those people. As was my friend Armin. He saw potential and gave opportunities that changed lives. He was deeply supported by his wonderful wife, Alexandra, a good friend of mine, who shared his journey and impact. In today's world, we often hear about what's wrong with Canada. But Peter Wall represents what's right, where hard work is rewarded, generosity lifts others up, and an opportunity exists for those who pursue it. People like Peter don't simply leave us. Peter's presence is etched into Vancouver streets, buildings, and in the lives he changed. And in the spirit of those he inspired, Peter Wall's legacy will live on forever. Thank you.
Member for Surrey Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On February 23rd, Jeevan Budwal, a talented young athlete from Surrey Newton, played his first game as a Vancouver Whitecaps at only 18 years old. This is a moment of pride, not just for him or his family, but for our community and for every young person who follows in his footsteps. For so many first-generation kids, moments like this are built on the sacrifices of their parents. Parents who came to this country with hope, immersed themselves in a new culture, worked long hours, and ultimately did whatever it took to create opportunities for their children. Whether it was driving to practice after a long shift, finding a way to afford gear and tournament fees, or simply offering unwavering support, their efforts made this moment possible. With this, I want to give a special thank you to Jeevan's parents, Gurinder and Kamaljeet Budwal. Sports have always been a powerful force in shaping young lives. They provide discipline, purpose, and a sense of belonging. They also offer an alternative to wrong paths in life by surrounding children with mentors, teammates, and a bigger goal to work towards. Jeevan's success is a testament to what happens when talent is nurtured, when opportunities are made accessible, and when a community comes together to support its youth. As he stepped onto the field last week, Jeevan represented something bigger than himself. He is proof of what is possible when you work hard and dream big. So, to every young person watching, may this be a reminder that with hard work, support, and belief, any dream and any career is possible. And to Jeevan, thank you for your hard work. We are all so very proud of you and can't wait to see what you do next. Go Jeevan and go Whitecaps.
Member for West Kelowna Peachland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise with immense pride wearing the jersey of the Mount Boucherie Bears senior boys basketball team as they continue their historic run at the BC Quadruple A Provincial Championships in Langley. Just days ago, these young athletes captured the hearts of our entire community with their remarkable victory at the Okanagan Valley Championship, defeating the Kelowna Owls in a thrilling 75-72 win. Last night, they played with determination and heart, defeating Port Moody's Heritage Woods School in a thrilling 95-85 come-from-behind victory. After trailing early, they took control in the third quarter and held on to secure the win. Tonight at 8:45 p.m., they will face last year's provincial champions, Victoria's own Spectrum School, in the quarterfinals. The road ahead is tough, but I have every confidence in this team's ability to rise to the occasion. I stand before you today not just as their representative, but as someone who has seen firsthand the incredible dedication, hard work, and heart these players have poured into their game. Their journey has been one of resilience, teamwork, and unwavering commitment to excellence. They are not just athletes, they are leaders, role models, and the embodiment of what can be achieved through perseverance. The playoffs go through the weekend, but while they step onto the court in Langley tonight, I ask every one of us here today and back in our riding of West Kelowna Peachland to send them our support, our energy, and our belief. The Mount Boucherie Bears have already made us incredibly proud, but I know they have even more to give. They represent the very best of our youth, and I have no doubt they will continue to push forward with the same fire, drive, and passion that has brought them this far. So, to Coach Kelly Broderick, the players, and their families, thank you for your dedication, your hard work, and your belief in one another. We are all behind you. Good luck, Bears. Go out there and show British Columbia what you are made of. We are with you every step of the way. Let's go, Bears.
Member for Burnaby South, Metrotown.
Honorable Speaker, I rise today in this chamber to recognize the profound significance of the Korean March 1st Independence Movement Day, an event that resonates deeply within the Korean community in BC and all those who value freedom and self-determination. Last Saturday, on March 1st, I had the privilege of attending the commemorative service marking this day hosted by the BC Korean Society and their president, Daniel Kang. As the currently only member of the Legislature of Korean descent, it is both my duty and my honor to share these reflections. So on March 1st, 1919, brave patriots proclaimed Korea's right to independence in the face of colonial rule. They shouted, 대한민국 만세, meaning long live Korea. Prior to this day, Koreans were systemically stripped of the most fundamental aspect of their identity. They were forbidden from using their own language, prevented from practicing their own cultural traditions, and even forced to change their names. The March 1st movement was a powerful collective response to these injustices, an unequivocal assertion that sovereignty, culture, and languages are worth defending at all costs. Honorable Speaker, while the circumstances in Canada currently differs from those in early 20th century Korea, the principles of self-determination remains as pertinent as ever. Today, as we reflect on the sacrifices made by those who came before us, let us renew our commitment to preserving these fundamental rights for future generations. This is the essence of sovereignty, that no external force should dictate how we live, speak, or govern ourselves. Our legacy of the Korean March 1st independence movement continues to guide us, reminding us that the freedom we enjoy, our ability to thrive and maintain economic security, to stay true north, should never be taken for granted. Thank you.
Third party House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, March 8th is International Women's Day. As we celebrate the women in our lives, we cannot forget the stark reality that most women face every day. Nearly 1 in 2 women in BC have experienced some form of intimate partner violence. For Indigenous women, queer and trans women, and racialized immigrant women, that number goes up to 70%. Advocates and organizations around BC work tirelessly to support survivors. They see thousands of women and children needing access to shelter and health services, and we know that there are many more who do not or cannot seek the help that they need. While the province has taken steps to address this crisis, there is still much more to do. We need to increase funding for shelters and crisis services, improve social and economic conditions with a guaranteed livable income, support educational institutions in developing effective sexual violence response protocols, and we must declare gender-based violence an epidemic. Economic uncertainty has made it harder for survivors to rebuild their lives, making access to housing, mental health, and financial supports more urgent than ever. On International Women's Day, let us recognize the progress that's been made and commit to addressing the challenges that remain. We must support and uplift survivors of gender-based violence. I call on all members to join me in working to make BC a safe place where no one has to live in fear or without support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Ladysmith Oceanside.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Today I rise to continue the theme of sports youth, to say farewell to the Cedars Secondary School senior boys basketball team. I may be playing the mom card a little bit today. Cedar Secondary is a single-A school that actually sits in the neighbouring riding of Nanaimo-Gabriola, but it's so close to the borders of our ridings that many of the players also live in my riding. My oldest son, Oliver, is in the 12th grade. Any parent who has a student who's graduating knows it's a year filled with finales. So recently I watched as Oliver and his teammates played their last high school basketball game with Cedar Community Secondary School. What makes this team so deserving of a shout out today, beyond their winning record, is the environment that they created for each other over the years of playing together. This team of incredibly dedicated athletes and staff built an environment of support, growth, and opportunity that helped these kids grow into the phenomenal young men that they have become right before our eyes. As they look forward to the next chapter of their exciting lives, I tip my hat to all of them, to coaches Peter Watkins, Tim Bunnett, and Jet Ferrero, to players Max Curry, Felix Leduc, Oliver Higginson-Trotter, Gavin Ward, Mateo Watkins, Mason Serpa, Logan Brownsword, Ryder Oakes, also an assistant coach, Corbin Trudeau, Gabe George, Jordy Birch, and Bailey Smith, the most well-dressed player on the team. To the senior boys basketball team at Cedar Secondary, I say thank you for the memories that you created. Thank you for doing your community proud and for being such incredible role models of positivity and support. These character traits will carry you far in life, and I can't wait to see where that is. And thank you to Cedar Community Secondary School for supporting these players through their high school journey. This exemplifies why Cedar Secondary is known as the little school with the big heart.
Madam Clerk.
Oral questions by members.
Member for Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Deficit and debt levels have reached an all-time high. In fact, every single minute that passes by is $13,000 to pay on interest. During this question period alone, half an hour, that's $400,000. Now the Premier gets up and he talks about families in British Columbia and how they're going to experience the economic hardships with these tariffs. But what he doesn't talk about is the fact that he has got an absolute double standard. Because at a time when he's saying British Columbian families are going to have to go without, whether it's the election promises he's made, what does he do? He increases his office. So, on one hand, we are telling Surrey School District they are going to have to cut buses for children with disabilities. Okay? They are going to have to cut and close learning centers. At a time like this, they're going to have to cut band programs. But for him, it's the most opportune time to increase the size of his office. How does this Premier get up and defend himself to the children of Surrey that are having to go without at a time when he increases his office?
Mr. Premier.
Thank you. Surrey has been a fast-growing community, Honourable Speaker, for many years. That was the case when the leader of the opposition sat on this side of the House. And they had choices to make then, and we had choices to make. When they were on this side of the House, they had the opportunity to do a new medical school in Surrey to head off the crisis around the shortage of medical workers in our province. They chose, it was a choice, not to do it. They had a chance to build the new hospital in Surrey. They had a choice. They chose to sell the land to a donor at below market value. Honourable Speaker, we're making different choices for Surrey. New hospital, new cancer centre for Surrey, new medical school for Surrey.
Member.
SkyTrain expansion in Surrey. Thousands of new student spaces in Surrey at new schools. The Snoqualmie Elementary construction underway, 655 seats in that one alone. 500 new seats for an expansion at Quantland Park Secondary. These are necessary investments for a growing community, and we are proud of them, Honourable Speaker.
Surrey White Rock supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the irony of that answer is that there seems to be a shortage of NDP MLAs from Surrey to applaud that. And I think we saw that tenfold in October. And listen, the Premier gets up and he talks about choices. And he's right, the choices that he's making. Let's talk about the choices this Premier has made. This Premier has made the choice at a time when people are having to go without, at a time when he is absolutely going back on his word on the campaign promises that he's made. He is making a choice to increase his office. He is making a choice to close learning centers. He is making a choice to tell the children of Surrey with disabilities that we cannot afford buses for them. He is making a choice to tell kids that are wanting to get into the band programs, we don't have the money to make. He is making the choice at that time to hire communications officials for these ministers. Those are his choices, and I think they're the wrong choices.
Shame on you.
So again, the Premier has maxed out the government credit card here, but he finds it the opportune time to cut from the Ministry of Environment and to increase the Premier's office. How does the Premier justify these decisions to increase his office when he is telling British Columbians that they need to tighten up their own budgets?
Mr. Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The member knows what he's saying about the budget is simply not true, Honourable Speaker. Over $1 billion.
Members.
Over a...
Members, are you interested in listening to the answer, please?
Over $1 billion in the capital budget for the City of Surrey for new schools. Now, remember to know that the Leader of the Opposition that he sits with, that when they were on this side of the House, they closed 256 schools, Honourable Speaker. That's the record. That's years ago, says the Leader of the Opposition. Yeah, it's been a while, remember, that's right. But the thing about the truth is, it's important to stand up for it. And I want to take a moment to recognize the people who stand for truth, the people who stand with integrity for what is true and honest, deserve to be recognized on the other side of the House. And I want to recognize the House Leader of the official opposition for standing with integrity, for truth, for residential school survivors. I know it's not easy, and she's doing, am I going to politicize this? Honourable Speaker, there is a member of this House who has gone on a podcast to call out the House Leader of the Opposition for standing up for residential school survivors. I'm not politicizing what should never be politicized.
Member.
There have been some despicable things that have happened, Honourable Speaker. They deserve to be called out, and the House Leader is right to do so.
Member for Skeena.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government has mismanaged BC's economy so badly that it is spending more on debt interest than critical mental health services. The amount of debt servicing in 1 year is $7 billion. That could fund 20,000 treatment and recovery beds. When will this government understand that detox, treatment, recovery, and wraparound support are essential in the fight against the overdose crisis?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and I really appreciate the question from the member and the fact that she's the critic for mental health and addictions, because it's so important that we as members in this House continue to work together to increase the amount of supports available for people, especially at this time when toxic drugs are killing people. Mr. Speaker, it's incumbent on us to do everything we can, and that's why this government has prioritized and will continue to prioritize expanding the continuum of mental health, substance use supports. Mr. Speaker, since 2017, we've invested millions and millions of dollars into mental health and substance use supports, $184 million alone to increase the injectable opioid agonist treatment services and tablet IOAT, $176 million to increase youth substance beds, Mr. Speaker, $138 million for opioid use disorder treatment, $88 million to fund recovery beds through year-end grants. Mr. Speaker, millions of dollars are going into this, but it's not enough. We've got to do more, and that's why we're going to stay focused on this, and we're going to continue to take every step that we can to bring down the number of lives that have been lost and the impact that all British Columbians and communities are feeling.
Member for Skeena supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Respectfully, we still don't have any new beds getting built this year, though, and that's what we need. For $7 billion in debt servicing, this government could instead fund enough treatment and recovery beds to begin healing British Columbians suffering from mental health disorders and addictions. This government clearly doesn't believe in treatment because they couldn't even follow through on their campaign promise to fund a second Redfish Healing Centre. How can this Premier look British Columbians in the eye and say he cares about the lives of people who are dying every day and not commit to a real recovery plan for BC? We need beds built.
Minister.
Thank you again, Honourable Speaker. We have added hundreds of new beds to the thousands that already exist, Honourable Speaker. I appreciate that the member opposite is mentioning the cost of debt servicing. And I want to point out that when the opposition leader was in cabinet a decade ago, the percentage of budget that was going to debt servicing costs, Honourable Speaker, was higher than it is today. We are taking steps.
Member.
Honourable Speaker,
Member.
we are taking steps to continue to invest in mental health and substance use, to continue to add treatment beds for youth, for Indigenous peoples, for groups of people that need this treatment and recovery. We're going to continue these investments, and we're not going to stop.
House Leader of the Third Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Critical Response Unit, or CRU, formerly called the Community Industry Response Group, is a lesser-known unit of the RCMP that operates largely in secret, brutally silencing land defenders on behalf of resource extraction companies. It's estimated that the government has spent at least $86 million on CRU since its formation in 2017. That's $86 million to harass, survey, intimidate, and criminalize protesters, land defenders, and Indigenous community members. This government's use of a police force to protect pipelines and logging projects and suppress free speech represents a profound failure to deal effectively with the climate emergency and to protect Indigenous rights. My question is to the Premier. Why is he continuing to fund the pipeline and logging police during a climate emergency?
Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. The characterization of the CRU unit by the member opposite misleads the true intent of the group. It is designed by police, for police, to deal with the issues that surround the pipeline in northern British Columbia. Any characterization that they're anything different is wrong. They do things as they've always done things, with fairness to all involved.
Member supplemental.
This year's budget forecasts natural gas royalties nearly doubling over the next 2 years. Yet numerous reports have warned that BC's nascent LNG industry carries significant economic risks for private and public sector proponents. BC's LNG industry will ramp up just as global LNG production is expected to plateau, making it a late entrant to a market dominated by established incumbents with better opportunities for economies of scale. It's a risky time to double down on further natural gas and LNG expansion, as long-term fiscal revenue streams are far from guaranteed. My question is to the Premier. Why does his government continue to invest in fracking and LNG when the economic forecasts paint a very uncertain future?
Minister of Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Thanks to the member for his question. British Columbia, since 2017, has taken a consistent approach to addressing LNG in BC. We focused on a guarantee of fair return for BC's natural resources, guarantees of jobs and training opportunities for British Columbians, respect and make partners of First Nations, and I think everyone acknowledged that that is happening, and protect BC's air, land and water while living up to our climate change goals, in addition to supporting BC communities. Now, that policy has been put in place over that period and has had, I think, some significant successes, including the lowest emission LNG in the world. And that's something that British Columbians can be proud of. We're going to continue to take the same thoughtful approach over the coming years that we've taken in the past years. And I believe, Honourable Speaker, that will continue to be successful for all of our goals as a society, economic and otherwise.
Member for Courtenay-Comox.
Mr. Speaker, in the next 21 minutes, slightly more time is left on the clock in today's ritual bloodletting, this government will spend over $275,000, nearly the equivalent of an ER physician's annual salary, just on debt interest Meanwhile, rural ERs are shutting down due to a lack of doctors and nurses. If they can waste billions on interest, why can't they manage to keep ERs open for rural British Columbians who desperately need them?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. Every time an emergency room needs to be closed temporarily because of staff shortages, it is really challenging for communities. And I appreciate that. I think every member in this House appreciates that, which is why we have to continue to do everything we can to attract new healthcare workers, to retain healthcare workers, to help fill those gaps, to help provide housing, childcare, all of the things that healthcare workers need when they're living in remote communities. Mr. Speaker, any interruption in services is stressful for people. But this is not a phenomenon that BC is experiencing alone. This is an experience that we are seeing across Canada. We are taking steps to attract new family physicians, to help build up the primary care system and reduce the burden on emergency rooms, to provide bonuses for people who are working up north, filling in critical healthcare worker gaps in remote communities. Mr. Speaker, there's more work to do, but we are making progress. And emergency room closures have come down 40% in the last 6 months compared to the 6 months before. That's the right direction, but there's more to do, and we're going to continue it.
Member for Abbotsford South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This government talks about helping Ukrainian refugees. Alex is a constituent of mine who was a medical doctor for 17 years in the Ukraine before escaping to British Columbia. Alex is fluent in English, and he would like to take the medical exam so he can practice here in BC, but the costs are prohibitive. He wants to give back. Will the Premier commit to waiving the exam costs for Alex to become a much-needed medical doctor, or does he think that increasing the funding for his spin doctors is more important?
Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I would love for Alex to be a doctor in BC, and I'm happy to work with the member to see whatever we can do to get him off the sidelines and into our hospitals. And I think the member's context of this being an individual from Ukraine, and I want to thank the member for standing up for one Ukrainian, but I hope that the members on the other side of the House stand up for all Ukrainians. Yesterday, we had an abhorrent moment in this House where the member for Surrey Panorama mistook a traitor and a man who attacked President.
Member.
It's a simple question, Mr. Speaker.
Question has been already asked. Member, question was asked very clearly.
A man who called President Zelensky,
yes.
quote,
Premier
the freaking Ukrainian
the
grifter, unquote. And then tweeted cheering on President Trump's attack on President Zelensky, saying, quote, America's back, baby. Zelensky gets put in his effing place. Honourable Speaker, that man who said those things was welcomed by that member as a patriot, Honourable Speaker. So this is the chance for the opposition to stand up, for the leader of the opposition to stand up and say that he doesn't think this man's a patriot, he doesn't think this man is an example, and he doesn't think this man should be applauded in this legislative assembly, Honourable Speaker.
Member for Abbotsford Mission.
Mr. Speaker, this government has mismanaged BC's business, resources, tax dollars of hard-working British Columbians. This health ministry has been sending cancer patients to the United States for treatment. That's $35 million spent on U.S. healthcare. That's 42 hours of this government's debt servicing payments that does not go towards essential services for BC cancer patients. Mr. Speaker, why does this government continue to fund U.S.-style health for British Columbians?
Minister of Health.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the member for the question. I mean, we're taking incredible action to improve cancer care here in British Columbia, but people shouldn't have to wait. And that's why we made this option available for people, taking action now so that people can get the cancer care that they need while we build out our cancer care system here in British Columbia. Mr. Speaker, it's always known, everybody's known, this was meant to be a temporary and exceptional measure to be able to allow people to access that care in the U.S., Mr. Speaker. But our focus has remained on building out here. And Mr. Speaker, it is working. We have steadily improved access to radiation therapy here in British Columbia. We've recruited more oncologists, more radiation therapists. We're investing in projects to deliver radiation therapy. And Mr. Speaker, almost 90% of the patients who are starting radiation treatment are doing so within 4 weeks. And that's an 11% improvement over the past year. We're going to continue this work. We don't want patients to have to go to Bellingham, but we're not going to deny them the care that they need. We're not going to bring in US-style two-tier system like we know the Leader of the Opposition has spoken about. We've heard, we're not going there.
Member for West Vancouver, Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This incompetent government has mismanaged this economy so badly. Instead of spending $18 billion on debt servicing, we could have doubled the budget for the Ministry of Education and Childcare to hire more teachers, EAs, counselors, psychologists. School boards are struggling with finite resources, deferred maintenance costs, and mushrooming portables. They grow overnight. Mr. Speaker, why are our children paying the price for this government's fiscal mismanagement disaster?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I want to thank the member for the question because all of us here in this House want to make sure that our kids have all the tools and support they need to thrive in schools. Our government has been investing in education since the beginning. The very first thing we did when we formed government was put an extra $1 billion into the education system. And we've had record increases year after year after year since. We are continuing to invest in education and will continue to do so. But, Honourable Speaker, I have to wonder where we would be today if we hadn't closed 256 schools under the Leader of the Opposition's time in government. I have to ask myself, where would we be if we hadn't sold off 21 properties in Surrey that could have been used for schools? This budget puts an additional $371 million in education to continue our investments into teachers, into education assistants, into the supports that kids need, because we value education.
Member for Langley, Abbotsford.
Mr. Speaker, this government has driven British Columbians deeper into debt and robbed us of our ability to pay for things British Columbians urgently need. Insiders have said that BC Ferries is facing a $500 million deficit. Mr. Speaker, my question through you, why is this government prioritizing interest payments to bankers instead of ensuring quality BC Ferry services, which is extension of our highways?
Minister of Transportation.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the member for the question. This government is spending more than $15 billion on capital infrastructure to improve our transportation systems in our province over the next 3 years, Honourable Speaker. This government has worked to ensure that BC Ferries has the most affordable rates by providing $500 million to assist them in terms of keeping ferry rates low for individuals, Honourable Speaker. And we're going to continue working with ferries to ensure that they maintain the best ferry system in all of North America and indeed the world, Honourable Speaker. Those are the choices that we make, Honourable Speaker, looking out for British Columbians every single day, whether it's transportation, education, healthcare. But what are the
Member.
opposition's choices, Honourable Speaker? Well, the Leader of the Opposition chooses to have a campaign director who wears a MAGA hat. He chooses to have a party president who goes to Trump's inauguration. He allows members on his side of the House, when the opportunity is to condemn Trump and his tariffs, they refuse to do so, Honourable Speaker. And worst of all, Honourable Speaker, they welcome into this House and call a patriot someone who praises Trump's tariffs, his efforts to undermine our economy, his efforts to undermine union workers right throughout this province, Honourable Speaker. The person they introduced and welcomed so proudly is not a patriot, he's a traitor and a quizmaster.
Thank you. Member for West... Member.
Ask a supplemental. I dare you.
Member, Minister, both sides, come to order. Member for West Kelowna Peachland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government has mismanaged the economy so badly. Debt interest payments are so high, it could have paid the salaries of 60,000 RCMP officers. That's 3 times the size of the entire RCMP force currently posted across Canada. Why did this Premier prioritize growing the debt instead of funding the police?
Solicitor General.
Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. This is a government that has increased policing in British Columbia. Over the next 3 years, 250 new police officers will be welcomed around the province. What we've been doing is concentrating on increasing the policing in British Columbia, and we will proudly continue to do so.
Member for Langley Walnut Grove.
Long-term care users are feeling left out by this government. They couldn't even maintain their commitment to provide 300 long-term care beds for Langley. 37% of Langley's population is over 65, which is higher than the provincial average. And yet, 3% of the interest on the debt could have had this facility built. Why are BC seniors so frequently left behind by this government?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. It's so important to make sure that seniors have the quality of life that they deserve. Indeed, they are the very people who built this province. And that's why this government continues to invest in seniors care and in long-term care, adding more than 5,400 new and replacement beds at 33 long-term care facilities. Honourable Speaker, hiring more home care workers, expanding programs so that seniors can stay in their homes, because we know that leads to healthier outcomes, better lives for everybody. But, Mr. Speaker, we don't have to imagine what life might be like under the opposition and what they would do for seniors, because when the Leader of the Opposition was on this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, he passed laws that devastated long-term care and led to the layoff of 10,000 workers. Mr. Speaker, he left 9 out of 10 care homes not meeting government standards. Mr. Speaker, we're taking a different approach. We're investing in seniors. We're going to continue to do that work.
Member.
And we're not going to stop, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Member for Kamloops Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, this has been quite the question period of bluster from certain members on the other side, but total evasion of questions. And it's interesting when you always know the government's in a bit of trouble when they start falling back to the year 2001 and things that happened in 2002, because that's relevant to the fact that they've been government for 8 years. We had a health minister answer a question about patients going to the United States by saying this government will not be adopting two-tier U.S. health care on a question about sending people to a private U.S. hospital, Mr. Speaker. You have the transportation minister touting their $15 billion in capital spending in this budget, I'd point out that the projects in the capital budget for this government are currently $15 billion over budget. Of course they needed to add $15 billion to the budget. They seem to not understand that there's a finite number of dollars to work with in British Columbia. Surrey SkyTrain, $1.9 billion over budget and a year behind. Richmond Hospital, $1 billion over budget, 2 years behind. Surrey Hospital, $1.2 billion over budget and a year behind. Patala Bridge replacement, $260 million over budget and 2 years behind. Broadway Subway, $127 million, 2 years behind. That's $4.5 billion of overruns right there, Mr. Speaker, and multiple years of delay. This government clearly cannot manage the finances of British Columbia. So again, why is this Premier, in the light of all of this fiscal mismanagement, prioritizing and actually protecting the hiring of political spin doctors and staff over the better finances for the rest of everyone else in British Columbia?
Members, these desks cost lots of money. Be nice to the desks. Thank you. Premier.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Let me begin first by thanking the member that asked the question for standing up for residential school survivors. I know it's not easy, but he stands with integrity, and I respect that. We don't always agree. Well, we don't agree generally. But on that point, we do. Honourable Speaker, costs are up. Absolutely. Families doing renovations, contractors wanting to build housing, businesses wanting to expand. They're seeing the impacts of global inflation, higher interest rates. Government's not immune from that. And so when we see these costs go up, we do have a choice. We're going to build all of the things the member listed: hospitals, rapid transit, schools, critical infrastructure to grow our economy, or do we abandon those projects? And the choice is obvious, Honourable Speaker. We have to build these things. We have to build our province. In this moment, more than ever, we have to make sure we can stand on our own 2 feet, train our people, treat our people, support our people, grow our economy. And that's what we're doing, Honourable Speaker. I am proud that last year we had the fastest growing economy in the entire country. And I'm proud of the 10,300 jobs that the private sector added just in January, Honourable Speaker. But we are on the abyss of the gravest economic threat this country has faced in generations. And we are going to support British Columbians. We have the second lowest debt to GDP ratio in the entire country. We have the space to do it, Honourable Speaker. We have the people. We have the geographic positioning. We have the resources, Honourable Speaker, and we have the government that is unquestioningly supporting British Columbians and Canadians every step of the way. We don't mistake racism for the truth, and we don't mistake traitors for patriots, Honourable Speaker.
The bell ends the question period. Thank you, members. The bell has ended the question period. Madam Clerk.
Orders of the day.
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In this House, I call continued debate on the budget.
Thank you. Minister of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. I'm so honored today to talk about the 2025 budget.
Just wait until everyone's out.
Oh, sorry.
Just wait until people exit.
Okay, we'll wait, Honourable Speaker, until everyone files out.
Great suggestion. Yeah, we'll certainly get everybody to take their conversation into the hall, and we will look to our minister shortly.
Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. We will call this place back to order, and we will turn to the Minister of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship for comments on the budget.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. And first, I'd like to acknowledge I'm speaking on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. Well, as you can imagine, the preparation of this year's provincial budget was particularly complex, given the ongoing threats of tariffs and other economic pressures from south of the border. The way forward will be challenging at times, but there is no doubt in my mind we will come out stronger on the other side, because that is what British Columbians do. We will continue to stand alongside our friends and our neighbours, work together to solve problems, and take advantage of new opportunities to make our lives better and our communities more resilient. As everyone in this chamber knows, British Columbians are amazingly resourceful. In times of adversity, we will pull together to face any challenge that comes our way. We are going to grow the economy by helping put people first and supporting businesses as we build a strong future. We will manage our finances carefully to safeguard frontline services people depend on without hiking costs to homeowners. We will improve healthcare and education by connecting more people to family doctors and building good neighborhood schools for our kids. And we will deliver homes people can afford while keeping everyday costs low, from childcare fees to car insurance bills. Improving public safety with new community safety initiatives and by training more municipal police. Building up BC's critical infrastructure with investments in roads, bridges, transit that keep people moving and goods moving. In Budget 2025, my ministry, the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, has been allocated over $220 million. That is an increase of just under $2 million from the year before, roughly 0.85% over what was provided in the previous budget. Our government is doing everything we can to support the hardworking people of British Columbia, enhance our communities, and make this province an even better place to live. And the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, of which I am so proud to be a part of, is an integral part of the effort, and this commitment to support its many programs reflects that role. So I'd like to provide an overview of just some of the crucial work that my ministry is contributing and what it's doing to support our government's overall goals. As Premier Eby stated, choosing between strengthening the economy and protecting the environment is a false choice. We can, and we must, and we will do both. After all, a healthy and more resilient environment contributes to a more robust economy in the long term. We must be ready to respond appropriately to any new challenges that arise and do what's right for our province and for British Columbians. We want our natural resources sector to support reconciliation with Indigenous people, environmental sustainability, and economic prosperity. We've been working tirelessly to advance these key goals, address the needs of communities, and support the aspirations of British Columbians. And this approach requires us to remain flexible. It requires us to remain nimble and adaptable and willing to look at new ways of doing things. Many changes have occurred in this province since the natural resource ministries were originally established over a decade ago. And one of those main things is the implementation of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act. To keep making progress, we needed to change how those ministries worked and how they were organized. In 2022, the Ministry of Land, Water and Resource Stewardship was established to build on the progress we had made up until that point. And First Nations are key partners in the work that we need to do to deliver prosperity for all British Columbians, whether it involves working together to address cumulative impacts, which includes the impacts of many decades of industrial development in this province, or developing new models of shared decision-making and co-management. This long-term approach is increasing the clarity and predictability that's needed to drive economic growth now and into the future. My ministry is also responsible for the development of effective policy and planning related to land and water use and to biodiversity and ecosystem health, including policies and programs for the effective management of species at risk. This portfolio also covers fisheries within British Columbia and managing our government's relationship with the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans. And in partnership with First Nations, we are implementing an approach for land and resource management that is helping make us better decisions about land and water use to benefit every single person in this province. As we streamline our permitting and tenuring processes, we will also advance regulatory reform by supporting the responsible stewardship of BC's natural resources while also encouraging sustainable economic growth. We are helping to create more opportunities for everyone in BC. And we need to take environmental goals into account as well as the needs of industry in this province. By working with First Nations as respected partners in the economy, our government is providing greater clarity for companies making investment decisions or contemplating new development projects in BC. And much of the credit for how far this ministry has come in recent years is absolutely due to my cabinet colleague, the current Minister of Health, and to the former Minister, Nathan Cullen. They help build the foundation for the work that we're doing today and the work that we will continue to do in years to come. Now, you also heard in this year's throne speech how our government is tackling some of the most pressing issues of concern for British Columbians. We are growing the economy by creating good jobs throughout BC and by collaborating with businesses, workers, and communities to attract investments in new and traditional sectors, as well as emerging sectors of the economy. We're reducing costs for families and individuals, including helping people access homes they can afford through support for first-time homebuyers, increasing the supply of rental stock, and stronger measures to crack down on housing speculation. We're strengthening healthcare by expanding access to family doctors and recruiting and training more health professionals, ensuring that every British Columbian can access the care they need no matter where they live, when and where they need it. And we're making communities safer by working with law enforcement and social agencies to address street disorder, crack down on organized crime, and do all that we can to ensure that repeat offenders stay behind bars. Premier Eby has specifically directed my Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship, to prioritize. Oh, yes.
We just need to refrain from using names in the House, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You're right. Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The Premier has specifically directed the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship to prioritize a range of initiatives to protect key services that British Columbians rely on. I'm working with the Minister of Finance to review all of my ministry's programs and initiatives to ensure that they are efficient, that they remain relevant, are responsive to the needs of British Columbians, to grow the economy, and to help protect the province's land and waters. This review is especially important in the context of current provincial budget restraints and the priorities of communities throughout this province. I continue to support cross-government efforts in partnership with First Nations to improve the timing and the transparency of our permitting process to better support sustainable economic growth in housing and in infrastructure as well, while still maintaining BC's world-leading environmental standards. Where opportunities become available, we will work with First Nations to reach large-scale agreements on land use and critical mineral and metal development. And this will be done in a way that expedites the permitting process, protects the environment, and offers greater investor security and increases prosperity for all British Columbians. The Minister of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship will work with communities that are affected by drought or expected to face water shortages to establish community-based priorities for industrial, agricultural, residential, and environmental uses of water. We know that water powers our province. We will also ensure better coordination between water regulators and local communities in advance of drought conditions to support an effective response during emergency situations. I will continue to work with my colleagues across government to achieve land use objectives that support conservation and contribute to a diversified economic strategy that supports a wide range of industries, including energy, technology, tourism, and resource development. As part of this work, my ministry continues to advance land use planning with First Nations, industry, and local communities. I'm working closely with the Minister of Mining and Critical Minerals to enable increased mining exploration and development in Northwest BC in partnership with First Nations. And this is being done in a manner that helps achieve the province's commitment to protect 30% of BC's land and waters by 2030, while also fostering economic growth and opportunities in the region. I continue to support our government's efforts to protect critical ecosystems alongside First Nations, communities, workers, industry, organizations, and the public in a way that upholds rights and title claims and contributes to long-term and inclusive economic growth that once again benefits all British Columbians. And my ministry is also working to restore estuaries, intertidal zones, and critical salmon spawning habitats. Underlying all these efforts, as I have been mentioning along the way, are the crucially important partnerships that we are developing with First Nations in BC. First Nations peoples have been deeply connected to the lands, waters, and resources within their territories since time immemorial. And studies done in countries around the world, in New Zealand and Australia and Brazil, show that when First Nations steward their own land, the biodiversity outcomes are generally much higher. Advancing reconciliation and implementing the Declaration Act and working in partnership with First Nations right holders to advance shared interests and responsibilities that every member of this government takes seriously. We are committed to lasting reconciliation with First Nations, which includes ensuring they have a say on decisions about their lands. Shared decision-making means shared prosperity for everybody in this province, and it's critical that we all work together to build a consensus about how British Columbia's resources are managed as we honor the commitments made under the Declaration Act. We must ensure that natural resource development is done in a manner that both supports reconciliation and is environmentally sustainable. We recognize there's a vital role for others to play in pursuing reconciliation. Many partnerships already exist between industry leaders and First Nations to move us closer to that goal. And increased prosperity relies in part on these types of partnerships, which are crucial for a thriving resource sector here in BC. And I acknowledge this work can be and will be challenging at times, but we are determined to collaborate with multiple partners to find creative and viable solutions and to ensure that people's voices are heard. When we work together, the outcomes are always better and we are always stronger. But we are determined to collaborate as well with multiple parties to find creative and viable solutions to ensure that people's voices are heard in all matters that are important to them and that affect them. It's a process that requires patience, perseverance, and a sincere willingness to listen. It's also about being open to new ideas and fostering an atmosphere of mutual trust and respect. So with about 15 minutes left, I'd like to take a few minutes to highlight just some of the many programs and initiatives for which my ministry has taken a leadership role. As I've said, the government priorities include both environmental stewardship and economic growth. Sometimes it may seem like those two goals are at odds with each other, but they do and they can and they will work in tandem to complement each other in the long run. For example, steady progress is being made to streamline our permitting and tenuring processes, but we also recognize that more needs to be done. We are not only addressing existing permitting backlogs, but more importantly, we're working across the natural resource sector to fix the province's permitting system as a whole. My ministry is working closely with other natural resource ministries to improve permitting and tenuring processes, to find innovative solutions to alleviate today's challenges and to create a more sustainable permitting system, all while maintaining high environmental standards. In the fall of 2023, a realignment of BC's natural resource ministries established the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship as the lead ministry for stewardship of all water resources and policy. And this change provided greater oversight for water management as we work closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, Ministry of Forests, the Minister of Energy and Climate Solutions, the BC Energy Regulator, as well as other agencies. And new cross-ministry oversight boards are now in place. The Regulatory Efficiency Board is focused on addressing systemic barriers. The Major Projects Implementation Board will ensure that mining and clean energy projects are fast-tracked. And reporting directly to the Cabinet Committee on Tariff Response, these boards will help ensure that British Columbia's economy remains strong and resilient. Teams of subject matter experts from multiple ministries conduct coordinated reviews of project applications, and they can advise project proponents on their plans, leading to better outcomes for land, water, and wildlife, while also supporting a stronger, more sustainable economy. BC's natural resource ministries have reviewed current legislation and policies and have identified over 60 potential changes to decrease the number of permits entering the system. Legislative changes will be proposed to help reduce duplication and more efficiently deal with low-risk permitting decisions. In our efforts to improve the permitting system, we are working more closely with First Nations on strategies to improve environmental management and boost economic opportunity. We're also enabling the delegation of authorities to streamline permitting processes between government departments, that is reducing delays on critical infrastructure projects such as roads and bridges. It's also supporting restoration activities in Northeast BC, and we are expanding decision-making delegation models to include other agencies. This means that more decision makers are helping to manage BC's resources and doing it more efficiently. The expansion of the BC Energy Regulator's one window approach to include restoration projects in Northeast BC will help support the sustainable development of oil, gas, and other resources. The Ministry of Transportation and Transit has created a specialized team to approve water licenses related to transportation projects specifically, and that has reduced approval times from 12 to 24 months to less than 1 month. The delegation of some decision-making authority from my ministry to the Ministry of Transportation and Transit frees up ministry resources that are able to be dedicated to other water-related decisions. Giving the Ministry of Transport and Transit the authority to handle permits for such projects has reduced permitting delays and saved the province millions of dollars. Our government's initial investments to improve permitting processes and reduce delays is already showing positive results as well. Over the past 2 years, we have successfully applied that one window approach to housing and to connectivity. We have eliminated backlogged applications for housing and reduced the turnaround time for connectivity applications by 51%. Streamlining those processes gives decision makers more capacity to focus on other natural resource decisions, and this approach is being applied more broadly across other sectors. For example, the Navigator service provides project proponents with early application reviews and end-to-end supports across natural resource ministries and the Ministry of Transportation and Transit until a decision is made. And that service is now being expanded to support connectivity and electrification projects. Another recent success is related to industrial development in areas that contain environmentally important wetlands, such as the Fraser Valley. Some project applications in that particular region were not making significant progress, so our ministry determined a new approach was needed. By working collaboratively and in line with the environmental mitigation policy, 2 of 6 recent projects were issued permits. Those permits represent $800 million in investments, while also providing a net benefit to wetland health and future flood and drought resistance in the area. Now, further efforts are also being made to reduce the number of applications needed to streamline processes between government departments and to accelerate key projects that support provincial priorities such as clean, renewable energy. And this streamlining effort enables ministry staff to focus on projects or applications that pose a higher risk to the environment. I want to talk about 30 by 30 with the few minutes we have left in terms of the budget and our environment. Nature, we all know this. Nature is one of our greatest allies in adapting to a changing climate, mitigating related risks, supporting healthy communities, and fostering a more prosperous economy. And that is what 30 by 30 is going to do for this entire province. Nature, for example, provides clean air and water, increased resilience to catastrophic weather and wildfires, access to sustenance for First Nations and British Columbians, and physical and mental health benefits for many people. In 2023, our government made a commitment to protect 30% of land and water in BC by 2030, and about 18.5 million hectares are already protected. That is about 19.7% of BC's total land area. Of that 19.7%, about 15.6% is conserved in parks and protected areas, and about 4.1% is conserved using what we call other effective conservation measures, or, because we definitely love abbreviations in Cabinet, OECMs. So to reach the 30% target, an estimated 9.9 million hectares, about 10.3% of BC's land base, still needs to be protected and preserved. We do this through land use plans, and they not only help identify areas for conservation and protection, but equally importantly, they also unlock access to natural resources, bringing better certainty and greater certainty on land base for industry and for business. Inclusive planning means that industry, local governments, communities, environmental organizations, and other stakeholders are engaged in the province's land use planning. People living in BC also share a deep connection to nature, from our ancient forests and diverse wildlife to our coastal waters and mountain ranges. And this is another process that I'm incredibly excited about. The draft Biodiversity and Ecosystem Health Framework reflects a collaborative vision for healthy environments, communities, and economies. It identifies mechanisms to improve the work we need to do to achieve the framework's vision across multiple levels of government with industry, non-governmental organizations, and communities. Completing the draft Biodiversity and Ecosystem Health Framework is a commitment that was made in our government's Old Growth Action Plan. And the framework is intended to align with the province's existing responsibilities to advance reconciliation and to safeguard the long-term health and well-being of communities, and it recognizes the deep interconnection between the environment and the economy, proving once again it's a false choice. Thank you. The Biodiversity and Ecosystem Health Framework will also support an approach that focuses more on entire ecosystems instead of just a single species at a time, resulting in greater benefits for multiple species on a landscape scale. This approach will also help reduce overall costs compared to a single species management model. The draft Biodiversity and Ecosystem Health Framework also upholds and enabled the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples by supporting 3 pillars, adopting a whole-of-government approach that demonstrates vision, leadership, and integration, fostering and supporting a whole-of-society approach that includes broad input from the public, and adopting an open and transparent process for supporting biodiversity and ecosystem health through ongoing evaluation, reporting, and collective learning. If we think of land use planning as a way to determine which activities could take place where on a land base, the Biodiversity and Ecosystem Health Framework will identify how we manage the land and resources to improve ecosystem community and economic resiliency. And finally, in just the couple minutes I have left, I want to talk about something called the Together for Wildlife strategy, because if there's something that also all brings us together, it's our support of wildlife in this province. The Together for Wildlife strategy was released back in 2020. It was built on a shared vision of thriving wildlife and resilient habitats that support and enrich the lives of all British Columbians. Salmon, grizzly bears, all keystone species that define who we are as a people. As I said the other day in the House, salmon runs through all of our veins, and it's something that we want to see sustained and increase the abundance of. Long-term ecosystem health and biodiversity is crucial for the health and well-being of communities, economic sustainability, maintenance of clean air and water, and the responsible stewardship of wildlife and natural resources for future generations. The Together for Wildlife strategy was developed with Indigenous peoples, rural communities, academic institutions, and a wide range of stakeholder organizations who all have a vested influence in the future of our wildlife in this province. It incorporates the goals and actions to improve the sharing of data and knowledge to inform wildlife and habitat stewardship decisions. When we have science, we can better protect the species that we love. The strategy also implements on-the-ground actions that directly support the stewardship and management objectives, the development of wildlife policies, the advancement of reconciliation, and the strong partnerships aimed at improving wildlife management. The strategy will deliver on priorities that were identified collaboratively with advisory bodies, and implementation of the strategy has also increased research and wildlife monitoring as well. With just a couple minutes to go, I would like to say that these are just some of the programs and initiatives that my ministry is leading to make life better for communities and individual British Columbians. And together we will continue to build on our strengths and pursue new opportunities. We are also actively planning for challenges that we face today and may face tomorrow. So we will continue to work closely with First Nations, communities, other partners on integrated approaches to the stewardship of water, land, and other resources that are critical and so important to each and every one of us. My ministry is fully aware of the need to coordinate government efforts to ensure that industry and businesses can operate together in an atmosphere of increased clarity that provides predictability and certainty. The enhanced ability of industry leaders to make investment plans and decisions will further strengthen our economy and support and create more local jobs. We are pursuing a balanced approach that respects BC's natural values while also providing improved transparency about the processes that used to make land use decisions. And by listening to each other, working together, and respecting differing points of view, we are making this province healthier and more prosperous. In Budget 2025, our government is taking positive steps to respond to today's priorities. Our budget prepares us to carefully navigate these uncharted waters so we can put people first and protect the businesses as we look ahead to ensure that we, our children, and our grandchildren will have a brighter and more secure future. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Now recognizing the member from Peace River South.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am here today to speak against the 2025 budget, a document that increases my already significant concern for the future of this province. But first, I would like to take this opportunity to speak of my wonderful family and my wonderful region of Peace River South. I would be remiss not to take this opportunity to thank my beautiful wife of 33 years, Tammy Neufeld. Her devotion to family and to our long-term marriage is without equal. I could not ask for a better partner in business, campaigning, parenthood, grandparenthood, or any other aspect of life. Thank you. I hope she was watching. I would also like to thank my 3 adult children, Danielle, Aiden, and Kira. While building my first business, I was not always as present as I would have liked to have been during some of their more formative years, and for that I do apologize and I thank them. I'm very proud of how all three of my children have navigated life and become productive young adults. Danielle has overcome a life-altering tragedy to finish her engineering degree, beginning practice toward becoming a professional engineer in Dawson Creek. She and her husband, Burl, have also gifted my wife and I with our first grandchild, Elijah Piper. My son, Aiden, took advantage of the fantastic dual credit program offered by Northern Lights College and South Peace Secondary in Dawson Creek to become a fully licensed Red Seal heavy-duty mechanic at the very young age of only 21. Indeed, quite a feat. My youngest, Kira, is in her last term of a degree toward forensic science from Trent University. She already owns and operates a business. I'm very proud of all of my children. Thank you to the campaign volunteers and supporters. As everyone in this chamber is aware, a campaign can be arduous, discouraging, exhausting, uplifting, joyous, euphoric, and every emotion in between. A real roller coaster. To go through this on your own would be a significant challenge. I was indeed fortunate to have a great and hardworking team around me. I would like to recognize and thank the folks that were instrumental in the significant work involved, allowing me to stand in this place. My campaign manager, Doug Scott, and his wife, Suzanne Scott. The drive and perseverance exhibited by Doug is second to none. Alan Scott did a phenomenal job of executing the campaign with respect to her home city of Tumbler Ridge. Kurt Peets, who provided much needed support in many areas, primarily as a keeper of the peace as needed, and for keeping everyone on task of executing the campaign in Chetwynd. As I sat at my desk creating the list of people to recognize for their efforts, I soon realized that I am restricted to 30 minutes, and the list would absorb a significant portion of that 30 minutes. So to those whose name I have not spoken, please accept this general thanks, and please be aware that I very much appreciate your support. The outpour of support was phenomenal and significantly appreciated. On any single day, we had up to and over 100 volunteers. It was phenomenal. I'd also like to take this venue to thank my constituency assistant, Heather Lowry. Her dedication, enthusiasm, and work ethic have certainly been noticed. I can't imagine handling the workload of a why am I having trouble with that word? Constituency office without her immense help. My legislative assistant, John Corey, has also provided invaluable assistance during both my time in Victoria, but also getting me here and getting me home again. His enthusiasm and drive to be involved in the process is commendable. Thanks for the Mickey D's, John. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the wonderful people of the South Peace region. My chest is filled with pride as I think of the hard-working, salt-of-the-earth folks that live in the beautiful riding of South Peace. From the rancher spending time checking fences, to the farmer overlooking their land to inform their decision related to spring planting, to the oil and gas worker waking up to yet another -35 day, to the coal mine employee starting their vehicle to head out to work. I have the greatest in camaraderie and respect. Those of us that chose to live in the North face challenges. However, I'm sure we all agree that the benefits far outweigh any and all challenges. The residents of my wonderful region are, as I've said, are salt-of-the-earth people. Many are entrepreneurs from across the country, attracted by past booms and the opportunities to start and build businesses. I was one of them some 30 years ago. I lived my formative years on a first-generation farm in northern Saskatchewan, where I was raised below the poverty line. This is where I learned to squeeze 2 nickels to make a quarter, a choice that we simply did not have in order to survive. The South Peace region contains a significant and very broad range of resources, and I'm very proud to share those with you. They include farming, ranching, forestry, oil and gas production, a significant amount of metallurgical coal production. We do have tourism. I'm sure everyone has heard of Mile Zero of the Alaska Highway. Well, that's my hometown, or that's the town in which I live. You've never heard of the, yep. It is, absolutely. We have multiple wind farms, and we do have the, some might say famous, some might say infamous Site C Dam within the riding as well. We also have very significant outdoor tourism opportunities. And I think that's what most of us in the region would agree keeps a lot of us there. The hiking, hunting, fishing, riverboat, side-by-side, snowmobiling, the list goes on and on. It's exceptionally diverse, and again, I'm very proud. Major issues in our beautiful part of the province. The medical system is a story that's often repeated, in fact I would say daily repeated in this chamber. Nearly half of my constituents do not currently have a family doctor, myself and numerous of my family members included. For many months in the South Peace, we've seen repeated closures of the emergency rooms. This outrageous situation is, well, I'm going to soften that language. This outrageous situation is totally the fault of this incompetent, inept NDP government. For 278 days, the Premier did not call back this House into session. For 39 weeks, the time that it takes a woman to have a baby, the Premier has done nothing but campaign for re-election, hire a legion of communication staff, take a long vacation, and hand out raises ranging from tens of thousands to $40,000 to $60,000 to every member of the opposite side of the House. One of my constituents, an X-ray technician at a local hospital, was fired from the hospital for refusing the COVID vaccination. While the government's policy reversal on vaccinations may sound nice on the surface, the local ER was recently closed due to the lack of an X-ray technician, while my constituent continues to remain sitting at home. The Conservative platform, which I proudly ran on, promotes a patient-first model of universal health care. This is completely not the two-tiered US-style system that has been suggested by others. This is a Western European-derived model, providing additional services to patients by utilizing government and non-government services. And I do like to, when I speak to this, I do like to use the example of an MRI, because unfortunately I do need to get those completed on myself every now and again. So under the Western European model, what it would allow is that a patient requiring an MRI would still go to the doctor, would still have a requisition for an MRI, but they would have access to both the private MRI clinic, which is in my city, or wait for the public MRI clinic, which is available in the neighboring city. The system would not include any cost to the patient. It would simply have the clinic bill the government, and there would be double the amount of MRIs and less waiting time, resulting in better results for better patient outcomes. Such a common sense solution completely ignored by this government. This government must do better for the rural residents of British Columbia. This government must do better for the people who live in the north of this province. Another significant issue in the South Peace is road maintenance. I've lived in the north for the vast majority of my life, and I'm here to tell you that highway maintenance needs on Vancouver Island or in Metro Vancouver are nowhere near close to the needs in my part of this great province, with our tremendous annual snowfall and our high elevation mountain passes included. The member sitting opposite may or may not be aware, but this NDP government takes a one-size-fits-all approach to highway maintenance, and that includes wintertime as well. A little over 7 years ago, this blatant fact was brought home loud and clear to me and my family. My wife and I were driving in the Pine Pass for a ski weekend when we came across the scene of a head-on collision between a tractor-trailer and a pickup truck. My wife was driving at the time, and she was startled when I abruptly opened the passenger door and jumped out of the vehicle while it was moving. I realized that the pickup truck involved in the accident belonged to our oldest daughter. Adrenaline allowed me to stay on my feet to the sound of skidding tires as I ran in front of the vehicle to approach my daughter's truck. After approaching and positively identifying the truck at close range, the next two steps were the most difficult in my life. I walked forward to look inside the destroyed vehicle. Thankfully, I'm going to take a glass of water. Thankfully, I was met with a scene of utter destruction, but no bodily fluids or worse. Turning to scan the scene further, I began walking toward the center of the area of carnage and was challenged by a wonderful emergency responder, to who I replied in an incredibly certain tone and volume that I am her father. I was directed to an ambulance where I found my daughter in the rear of the vehicle and her husband, who had been in the passenger front seat, strapped into the vehicle, or into the ambulance. Unbeknownst to me at that moment, while conscious and verbalizing, my daughter was clinging to life. As my daughter would not have survived the ambulance ride to Prince George due to the severity of her injuries, she was taken to the Mackenzie Clinic for stabilization and warming prior to transport. Warming was required due to the 2-hour extraction process and the time that she had laid on the snow supported in her husband's arms. Arriving in Prince George at 1:30 a.m., the surgical teams were woken to perform emergency surgery following life-saving actions taken in the trauma unit. Having lost over 50% of her blood volume internally, my daughter was left with rods in both femurs, plates in both arms, a pelvis in 12 pieces, fractured ribs, followed by a 2-month hospital stay, culminating in learning how to walk again. To this day, my daughter requires a dual knee replacement from that accident. A life-altering experience for all involved. I am thrilled to announce that 7+ years following this horrific accident, the same daughter has finished her degree in engineering and, as previously mentioned, gave my wife and I. I have awoken many times over the past 7 years with the realization that given the notable deterioration in health services in the North, I seriously question that should that same accident have occurred today, would my daughter and granddaughter be with me? The citizens of Northern British Columbia deserve better. The other item that I'd like to move on to would be the fire protection in our area. Or do we have time, Speaker?
You can adjourn the debate now, member, if you like, then we continue in the afternoon.
Mr. Speaker, I reserve my right to continue at the next sitting and move adjournment of the debate.
Member, you heard the question to adjourn the debate. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Acting Government House Leader.
Thank you. I move the House to now adjourn and see you in the afternoon.
You heard the question to adjourn the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. This House stands adjourned until 1 p.m. today.